Corey Haim was dealing with family issues of his own. Shortly after moving to Los Angeles, his parents decided to split up, and both Corey's father and older sister Carol headed back to Canada.
Corey thinks that it was his fault. He really thought it was because he started becoming an actor, because we moved, because we disrupted the whole family.
Corey's parents divorcing was very difficult for him. It really separated the family.
I was like, ooh, it just felt weird that my parents' marriage is dissolved, like, never happened.
Both Coreys were bitterly disappointed with their family lives. But when their movie, The Lost Boys, premiered in July of 1987, they vaulted into the top ranks of teen movie stars.
When a vampire buys it, it's never a pretty sight. No two bloodsuckers go out the same way. Some yell and scream, some go quietly. Some explode, some implode.
There was an immediate chemistry between the two, and you can see it on the screen. Their sparks flew. They played off each other. It was just the most amazing pairing of young actors that I've seen in a long, long time.
I think they really realized that they had something special together, and they tried to take it to their advantage.
They were like real best friends. They were like your friend's cool brother and his friend.
And then from that point on, for the next, I don't know, 5 years, we were pretty much inseparable. I mean, we hung out every day after work. We were together constantly. There was no kind of, you know, master plan or big brain idea to put us together. It really just happened haphazardly.
The Lost Boys sparked what became known as Corey Mania and changed the lives of the two teen actors forever.
Corey Mania was, to us, pretty much the same as what Beatlemania must have been to them, except on obviously a smaller scale. I mean, we were literally in the eye of a tornado.
Every young girl had their pictures on their locker and had a type, and you either had one Corey or the other that you're interested in.
Everywhere we went, screaming fans. I mean, everywhere.
In the late 1980s, Corey Haim and Corey Feldman were the highest paid teen actors in Hollywood, beloved both by studio chiefs and young girls from coast to coast.
They were so big. They were so big. In all honesty, they were so big, so well known.
It was craziness. And everywhere we went, all over the United States, anytime we showed up together, I mean, even if we showed up individually, but especially if we were together, it was just this apex of pandemonium and insanity.
The girls reacted to both of them like rock stars. They screamed.
I think they both really loved it. I actually remember one time I was out in Los Angeles and we were in a mall together, and we actually made a mad dash for the parking lot because we were being chased down by a bunch of girls.
People want me to, like, actually give an autograph while I'm driving, doing like 60 on the freeway. It's, you know, nuts. 16 years old. I just got my 4th car in 4 months, going through them like nuts. It was a crazy, crazy, crazy lifestyle.
By the time the duo began working on License to Drive in the fall of 1987, the mania was at an all-time high.
We were trying to shoot License to Drive at this high school here in Los Angeles, and we couldn't shoot anything because it was just tremendous roaring of these kids all the time. And they would shake our trailers, like rocking our trailers, and we're stuck inside the trailer getting tossed around going, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And I just, like, we'd open the door for a second, I'd throw some autographs out, close the door.
Somehow, the Coreys managed to complete the movie. And when it was released in July of 1988, License to Drive was a major hit with the Tiger Beat set.
You know, Dean, can't help wondering, is it ever gonna get that good for me?
Anderson, the only difference between you and that greaseball is that he has a license and you don't.
From an artistic standpoint, okay, License to Drive wasn't the greatest movie ever. But I wouldn't say it was a bad teen flick. I think it was actually pretty highbrow, considering it was a teenage comedy.
Eager to cash in on their newfound fame, the Coreys collaborated on another movie, Dream a Little Dream. But by the time the movie hit theaters a year later, Corey Mania had already begun to wane.
Dream a Little Dream was probably the biggest bomb, but the highest concept, but had a huge afterlife in cable and video and everything else.
The movie got mixed reviews and so-so box office receipts. Worse, both Coreys were beginning to resent the fact that many people couldn't seem to tell them apart.
We couldn't take it anymore. We were losing our identities. I'd walk down the street, people would be like, Corey Haines, Feldheim, or Heimfeld. So it was like, look, if I'm going to continue having a career, I need to step out on my own.
By 1989, the Coreys not only had their names and ages in common, they had drug problems in common as well. Flush with money and troubled by his career path, Corey Feldman began experimenting with drugs well before his 18th birthday.
It was a very quick and steady progression. I was, ironically enough, doing work for the Nancy Reagan Just Say No Foundation. After the 3 films were over was when I started getting into my really bad drug problem, and he got into his, just kind of the beginning stages of his.
Corey started acting a little funny, you know, and I didn't really exactly know what it was. And then somebody came and told me that he was using cocaine.
After Lost Boys, things got a little difficult for him. I think there was a point in his career where, just with the pressure, and I think also probably a lot of it relates back to his family splitting up.
At a time when most kids are preparing for final exams, Corey Haim was hitting Hollywood clubs and acquiring a major drug habit.
There's a pattern I slipped into. Everything becomes too fun, everything becomes too accessible. Drugs, booze. I mean, I got my Lost Boys tattoo, I was 15 and a half.
When you're a 16-year-old actor and you're living in Hollywood and you've got all the money in the world and all of the freedoms that you want, I don't think you're in the right state of mind to make the correct decisions.
The irony of my whole life story is that out of everybody in Hollywood, I've probably done less drugs and less alcohol and less partying than 90% of the community. Because I did it for 2 years. That was the whole run, was 2 years. It was like, started smoking weed like 14 years old, and by 15 I tried cocaine, acid, mushrooms, everything except for heroin. By, I think it was 16, I started heroin.
It just spun out of control like most child actors. They're not prepared for the impact that they're having, for the celebrity that they become, and it probably led to their drug addiction and all the trouble they got into.
By 1990, the Coreys' fast rise had been matched by an equally ferocious fall. These prototypically cute teens were suddenly seen as bad boys and Hollywood cast-offs.
On the cover of all these teenage magazines, that turns your head around. It makes you think that life is going to go on like this forever, but it doesn't.
You're used to the paparazzis being there, you get used to people coming and wanting autographs. You know, it's just a way of life because you become like a face, you know, where everybody recognizes you. And if you don't get that, you go, oh, okay, what's wrong with me?
It was like, you know, 1 minute you're on top, the next minute we don't even want to talk to you. We don't want to talk about you. I mean, you're an embarrassment.
Once the brightest of on-screen partners, Corey Haim and Corey Feldman now shared a very different and very stark reality. Struggling to find their way. Both had bad drug habits and stalling careers. Disillusioned, Corey Feldman was looking for something better in life. And in the summer of 1989, he thought he found it when he met actress Vanessa Marcil.
When Corey was 18, he met Vanessa. They got married 2 months later.
My first marriage was a very dysfunctional relationship, and we were very codependent and yet very destructive at the same time.
The marriage certainly didn't change Corey's worsening habits. On March 9, 1990, he was stopped by police and arrested for having 25 balloons of heroin in his car.
The cop pulled him over, digs into the back seat, and there are balloons of heroin. Off to jail.
Oh, it was awful. The media in general kind of made me the staple punching bag for the era.
I know that I have a problem, and I would like to take care of that problem. I would like to seek help for myself, and I would also like to help others. So the sooner I can help myself, I can help other people.
I mean, literally, I had comedians making jokes about me. I had newspapers saying some of the most awful, just mean-spirited, degrading things I've ever read about anybody. It went from like, oh, he's a drug addict, he's got a problem, to what a loser, to what a has-been, to oh my God, he's washed up, and why are we even talking about him and wasting the news ink?
But the humiliation wasn't enough to force Corey to get sober. 6 months after his first arrest, he was busted again for heroin possession. Even by the standards of Hollywood, it was a stunningly fast fall.
There had never been a teen actor that was as successful as I was that had fallen as hard as I did. It hadn't happened.
I was hurting myself, he was hurting himself. We went through a dark period.
I had so much, and I lost it, and I destroyed it, and I have nobody to blame now except for myself.
Feldman accepted a plea bargain and was ordered to Cry Help, a drug treatment center for 9 months of rehab. He successfully completed the program, but soon found that staying sober wasn't the only challenge he faced.
The great misconception is that, oh, he was a child star, he made millions of dollars. But after 13 until 18, I had drug problems, I had legal problems, I had all this stuff that soaks up your money. So at 18 years old, there I was once again reinventing the wheel. And at that point, after all of my struggles and my battles and coming out clean and sober, I was $100,000 in the hole. I got a divorce from my wife. That ended terribly.
Feldman stayed clean, but as he auditioned for new roles in Hollywood, he found that his past was difficult to escape.
After Corey got sober, the roles really started to dry up because casting directors thought, is he going to show up?
And I did Meatballs 4, these like terrible, schlocky movies, which I later realized catapulted me into B-movie stardom, which was the worst thing in the world to me. Just at the time that I could value art and appreciate the right choices in a career, it was too late for me to do anything about it.
By the early 90s, both Corey's careers were flatlining. Worse, Corey Haim continued to do drugs.
All the stuff I've ingested in my body, all the crazy nights I've had with my friends driving me to the hospital if I'm overdosing. Am I overdosing? So being famous and doing the drugs was my pattern for right then.
Corey and I went down the road together. The train left the station, and when we got to the B platform, I jumped off. He kept going.